All right, let's call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. First thing, roll call.
Nyla Fry.
Here.
Trisha Brown.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Joe Zisselsberger.
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
Next thing, confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 6/2. The final agenda was posted in all 3 official posting locations on 6/1. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 6/1. Just 2 minor things for the audience to be sure that you've signed in on the sign-in sheet with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment, please fill out the public comment form and hand it to me prior to the agenda item.
All right, next on the agenda is public comment. This is the only public comment time we have today. There are no public hearings. So if there's anything on the agenda that you would like to comment on, please, now would be the time to do so. And Carla, I believe you have some cards.
And for clarification, we also allow comments for items not on the agenda.
Oh, thank you very much, Todd.
So the first one is Kaylee Rice at 201 4th Street, Waunakee.
And Kayla, if you can just make sure the button is pressed and it's on green. Thanks.
Oh, I can't move it. Okay. As you said, my name's Kaylee Rice. I was just here to comment on the item. I saw there was a petition to change the flag and lighting policy. And I just wanted to comment that I'm against any changes. I think it's working fine as is. I think it's important that our community continue to strive to be inclusive and welcoming. And I think that the flag policy as it is allowed that with flying some commemorative flags for Juneteenth and Pride Month and the Ho Chunk Nation and all that. So I think it's good as it is. So that's all.
Jerry Ashmore at 114 South Street, Waunakee.
Hi, thank you. I'm also speaking on the petition regarding the flags, commemorative flags displayed in the village. Spoken this last week, and when I saw it was on the as a business item to be discussed again today, I thought I'd come back and speak again. It really seems like the proposed policy is a solution in search of a problem. We have a policy, it is working well. Some of the things in the proposed policy, such as only flying commemorative flags here at Village Hall, not at the Village Center, not at the Waunakee Library, seems really unnecessary, and I can't think of any good reason for it. It kind of lessens the impact of having a commemorative flag. So I really don't see why that would have been included in any proposed policy. The other proposal, well, there's a proposal that it needs to be a Waunakee resident to request a commemorative flag. Well, already in the policy, it's a requirement that it actually be a member of the Waunakee Village Board that makes a request for a commemorative flag. So that proposal is actually less restrictive. Might be a good idea, but I think having a requirement that it be a member of the board is certainly sufficient. The other thing on there was that the decisions be made for the entire year for any commemorative flags in January. Why in January? There's no reason given for why it would be appropriate to do it in January. It's beginning of the year, but so what? You could do it any other time of the year, or you could do it as we do now, as the months come up that the commemorative flags are for, which seems appropriate. It seems to me that for instance, last meeting where it was being, or the approval was being made for having the gay pride flag flown for the month of June was done in May. That was right before the month that it was, that was the commemorative month. And it was in fact one of the first meetings where new members of the board were seated. So it seems highly appropriate to have the most recent members of the board voted on by voters in the village to make that decision. January seems to me, I'm thinking of why would you insist that it be in January? Well, it is the beginning of local elections, campaigns for local elections, because campaign papers need to be put in at the very beginning of the month of January, and then the election is the very beginning of April. And so, well, you know, in the last election, we saw some what I thought were ridiculous attacks on the Waunakee Library. some out claims that the Waunakee librarians were grooming kids, and a lot of that stuff. Somewhere in the tiny kernels of truth of story behind these ridiculous claims were things that no one should really be blaming anybody in the Waunakee Library for any misbehavior or anything. The year before that, there were some ridiculous claims around election season that they were furries in the Waunakee schools. That was also kind of ridiculous, but I don't know, supposed to get people fired up to come out and vote or something. So to me, if you're going to have votes on things like the pride flag in January, is it going to become fodder for more ridiculous culture wars and silly stuff online before the election? I don't want to see that. I was tired of seeing it in the last couple of elections. So I'm definitely against having that decision required to be in January when it's an inappropriate time for the decision being made. Thank you.
Linda Ashmore at 114 South Street, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm Linda Ashmore, and I'm here to address the commemorative flag item on the agenda as well. And I was here at the last meeting addressing the petition, and Jerry made some of the same points that I made at the last meeting. The changes that are being proposed make it harder to fly the commemorative flags and also limit where they are flown. So when you start limiting where the flags are flown and how hard it is to actually get the flag policy passed, then you limit their impact. The existing policy has worked well for the past few years, and I don't see any need to change it. Why is flying the flag so important to me? I am a mom of a member of the LGBTQ community, and I found out that I didn't know very much about LGBTQ history or issues except from my own experience. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and gay people were invisible for the most part at that time. There were laws that targeted them, and people stayed in the closet. In 1969, there were the Stonewall riots. Police raided a gay nightclub and beat patrons, and that led to 6 days of protest and also more visibility. The 80s brought the AIDS crisis, and the moral majority claimed that it was a punishment for gay people. Princess Diana and movie stars and actors spoke up in support of gay people, and Diana's hospital visits put a human face on those who were dying. The 90s saw some progress with the military passing the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, which from this perspective, it doesn't seem like much progress, but at that time it was. That policy allowed gays to serve in the military, but not if they were openly gay. That policy was repealed in 2010, and now there is no longer a question about sexual orientation or discrimination against serving. In 1998, a University of Wyoming student, Matthew Shepard, was brutally beaten and tied to a fence post and left to die. Much like the killing of George Floyd, that really raised awareness and brought people out in support of gay rights. In 2014, Wisconsin legalized gay marriage. In 2015, the Supreme Court upheld that right nationally. I'm here tonight on my 31st wedding anniversary with my husband, Jerry. And it struck me that there are no gay couples in the US who can actually make that claim, as marriage was denied to them until less than 10 years ago legally. I am so proud that public opinion is now strongly in favor of gay marriage. Given the history of discrimination and the current political climate, where there have been over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced nationally, these flags signify that Waunakee is a welcoming community. I and friends have driven around town making a point of seeing the school and village flags. They are a much needed affirmation. The other flags that are flown celebrate Black History Month and the Ho-Chunk Nation. It's good to acknowledge that we are on ancestral lands, and the Black History Month flag, I didn't know what it was. And maybe look, and I just want to close with saying, the more that we open our minds, the easier it is to open our hearts. Thank you.
Jody Benz, 703 Pleasant Valley Parkway, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm also here to comment on the petition to not to fly commemorative flags. But I I think I have more questions than anything. I wonder, and so do several others, as to why the petition was even brought before the board. The display of flags, the street lighting policy has been in place for several years, and there have been no issues. Is this petition because less than 1/2% of Waunakee doesn't support certain commemorative flags? And is it possible that they don't understand the positive impact these flags show on our community? The support these flags represent to the community is beyond flying a flag. It shows that Waunakee and those who pass through is a welcoming community. Juneteenth flag, Pride flag, Ho Chunk flag is part of our community. That's who we are. For example, in the Progress flag that we're flying this month for Pride Month, it's flown not only in Waunakee, but the Wisconsin State Capitol, federal buildings, and at US embassies around the world. Thank you to the board for unanimously voting to fly the Pride flag and showing the support on behalf of our own community. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street, Waunakee.
Hello, I'm Mary Heimbecker. I'm here to speak on two, and I know I have 3 minutes for both. So business item 3, which is the pride flag and the commemorative flags. I support the way it's written right now. As a mom of biracial children and a grandmother of a multiracial grandchild, flying these commemorative flags shows to me that Waunakee is actually becoming more open. When my kids were here, they were harassed so bad in the high school that I actually pulled them out. It's important that these flags fly to show that Waunakee is changing for better and to be more welcoming to individuals and the marginalized individuals of our community. And then the other item is business item number 4. It's deep in my heart that we, as you know, I was on the housing task force. I support Affordable Housing Betterment Fund. I know that that doesn't open us up for more affordable housing, but it will help individuals who are lower income to make their homes better, and it'll be available for them. So that's deep in my heart, and I strongly support that adoption of that fund. Thank you very much.
Stephanie Pfeiffer, 1311 Tierney Drive, Waunakee.
So like everyone else, I'm also want to make a comment on the proposed changes to the commemorative flags. We should be looking to celebrate diversity in all its forms in the community and most especially in our schools, in large and small ways. Flying of the flag might be considered something small, but I think all the small things add up to big things. And all that starts from the top down, in my opinion. So it sets the tone for our students in the schools, which I think is really important. We should be looking to make efforts like this easier, not more difficult, as the proposed changes to the policy seem to be trying to do. So I'm hoping that the board chooses to leave the policy as is. Thank you.
Is that all of the submitted comments?
That is all submitted.
Do we have anyone online, Todd? All right, and any other comments? No? All right, seeing that, we will close the public comment section. Thank you for those that came out tonight. Next up, consent agenda. Do we have a motion? Well, would anybody like anything pulled from the consent agenda? No?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a-
Second.
All right. Any discussion of the consent agenda? Not? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda is passed. Next, we have presentations, discuss and take action on proclamation of service for Chris Sellner. Is Chris with us? I do not see him either. I do not see him either. All right. So we have also discussion and take action of proclamation for Phil Willems, Gary Hertzberg, and Peter Sukjamel. So I will.
And if you would care for us to delay action on the ones for Phil and Chris until they're in the room.
Oh, gosh.
Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, did they leave? So.
if you'd
all
like to
right.
delay the one on Phil intentionally, because he can.
I don't think we'll do that, but I do think if it's okay, I'll go over to the podium. All right. We made fun of Phil even after he's retired. That's hardly fair. All right, Phil Willems. You may please come over here so we can honor you. I'm gonna have to move this down because I'm very short.
More of this improvement for the birds.
I love it. I love it. I love that. I wish I should have worn something matching. There we go. Phil, thank you for coming here tonight. And I'm going to read this in honor of you for all the service that you have given to the community over the year. And what we're about to say is just a slice of what you have done for Waunakee. Whereas Phil Willems, an active citizen of the community since 1975, has faithfully served the village of Waunakee as trustee for 16 years. And whereas Phil Willems' contribution to municipal government is an indication of his pride in our community. Particularly notable is his public service on the Senior Services Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee, and the Planning Commission. And whereas Phil Willems and his wife operated Waunakee's Ben Franklin store from 1977 to 2002, and he is one of the founding members of the Waunakee Area Chamber of Commerce, and further supports the Waunakee community by serving on the Schumacher Farm Trust and the Rotary Board of Directors. And whereas Phil Willems has been dedicating to making the village a better community by utilizing his 40 years of retail management experience in and around Waunakee to help bring new ideas to our community. And whereas Phil Willems has empowered the village staff greatly over the years by listening to and trusting to the opinions of our skilled employees to assist him in making informed decisions. And whereas Phil Willems has been instrumental in Waunakee's growth during his time as village trustee, advocating for the increased services and offerings while still maintaining Waunakee's small town feel. And whereas the village board, the employees of the village of Waunakee, the residents of the village of Waunakee, and all of those in our community have benefited tremendously from Phil Willems' diligence, resourcefulness, and commitment. And now let it therefore be resolved that the village board of the village of Waunakee extends its sincere and heartfelt appreciation to you, Phil Willems. And we hereby commend you for your dedication and your outstanding service to the village of Waunakee. And we wish you well in your future endeavors. So let this proclamation be entered into and made part of the permanent record of the village of Waunakee, and let a suitable copy be made to Phil Willems, passed and adopted on this 5th day of June, 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to say anything?
I can only say that Waunakee has been very good to Betty and I. And the bad news for you is we plan to stick around here 12 months of the year for the balance. We don't intend to be snowbirds. We might take a vacation here and there, but you're stuck with us year round for a long time. See you later.
All right, Gary, it's your turn. Please join me at the podium if you don't mind.
And just a procedural note, we'll have the board take action on all proclamations written after Kristen finishes those.
Thank you very much, Todd. Yeah. Gary, whereas Gary Hertzberg, an active citizen of the community for many years, has faithfully served the village of Waunakee as a trustee for 21 years. Whereas Gary Herzberg's contribution to municipal government is an indication of his pride in our community. Particularly notable is his public service on the Finance Committee, Utility Commission, Parks and Recreation Committee, and the Planning Commission. And whereas Gary Herzberg is dedicated as a community volunteer, spending many hours helping to successfully organize community projects such as Walktoberfest, Waunafest, and helping the Waunakee Community School District. And whereas Gary Herzberg led by example during his time as Waunakee Village Trustee, working closely with village staff and committee members to positively impact the village of Waunakee. And whereas Gary Herzberg was instrumental during the planning process for the Waunakee Village Center, the Waunakee Public Library, and the revitalization of downtown Waunakee. And whereas Gary Herzberg has been dedicated to making the village of Waunakee a desirable place to live by helping to create a family-friendly community that is welcoming to all. And whereas the village board, the employees of the village of Waunakee, and the residents of the village of Waunakee benefited tremendously from Gary Herzberg's diligence, resourcefulness, and commitment. Now let it therefore be resolved that the village board of the village Waunakee extends its sincere and heartfelt appreciation to you, Gary Herzberg, and hereby commend you for your dedication and outstanding service to the village of Waunakee, and we wish you well in your future endeavors. So let this proclamation be entered into and made part of the permanent records of the village of Waunakee, and let a suitable copy be presented to Gary Herzberg. There you go. Thank you. You want to say anything?
Again, I'd like to thank my wife, Jean, for 20 years of support, helped me do all the things that we get accomplished here in Waunakee. And I thank the village staff at our last appearance I was at. What a great staff we have, and people who do the work in this town are just dedicated, great people. But I forgot one guy the last time I did this, Todd Schmidt. I think I hired 3 village administrators over my term that I've been on the board. And we didn't hire Todd the first time. He reminded me of that because we thought he was too young. And the second time around, we made the right decision. Todd, you got to think of what, excuse me, people in the community that lead our community do it statewide. Todd's been state president for a number of organizations. He represents this community and does a great job. So I apologize, but thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Gary. Peter. All right. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proclamation honoring Peter Sukumel. Whereas the village of Waunakee values its employees and entrusts them with its services to its residents, and whereas the village of Waunakee have long enjoyed the benefits of great public works and a public works parks department, and whereas Peter, you've been a long-standing employee of the Waunakee Public Works Parks Department, and whereas Peter Sukumel for the past 23 years worked alongside other crew members to ensure the village infrastructure is properly maintained. And whereas Peter has been instrumental in the maintenance and development of village streets and parklands, and whereas Peter has been a valuable asset to snow removal operations, ensuring a safe community for all motorists during inclement weather, and whereas Peter has been a valuable asset to turf and tree maintenance operations, ensuring a safe and enjoyable community for all residents and visitors. And whereas Peter has been dedicated to making the village a better community by becoming a certified arborist, and whereas the village board and the residents of the village of Waunakee have benefited greatly from your devotion, from your dedication and your hard work, now let it be resolved that the village board of the village of Waunakee extends its sincere and heartfelt appreciation to you, Peter, for your untiring commitment to the Waunakee Public Works Parks Department and the Waunakee residents. So let this resolution be entered into and made part of the permanent records of the village of Waunakee, and let a suitable copy be made and presented to Peter Sukumel. Congratulations. Thank you so much for being so well. My life and safety.
No, thank you all. This has been a great place to work over the years, that's for sure. And I want to thank my coworkers. You really made everything good. Thanks.
All right. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you all for your service. Now we need to make it official, correct?
I appreciate that Chris is not here, but I would still, since it's on the agenda, I would still
Just
read it.
read it?
And
All
then-
right.
And then when we're done, it'll be up to the board. You could just do one motion to approve all four, or you can do separate motions,
Okay.
however you prefer to move forward.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah. All right. Our appreciation for Chris Zellner, and we will, when he is able to attend, we will represent this again. Whereas Chris Zellner, an active citizen of the community for many years, has faithfully served the village of Waunakee as village president for the last 8 years and as village trustee for the 7 years preceding his presidency. And whereas Chris Zellner's contribution to municipal government is an indication of his pride in our community, with notable service on the Planning Commission, Community Development Authority, Finance Committee, and Wannaboom Committee. And whereas Chris Zellner is the founder of several annual village traditions, including Wannaboom, the Holiday Tree and Decor on Main Street, and the Light the Night celebration, and dedicates many hours each year to planning and preparing for these and other community-wide events. And whereas Chris Zellner has been dedicated to appreciating the history of Waunakee, advocating for the adoption of the land acknowledgement recognizing Waunakee as the ancestral land of the Ho-Chunk Nation, building the foundation for what is now a strong relationship between the village of Waunakee and the Ho-Chunk Nation. And whereas Chris Zellner put great emphasis on the importance of village employees and their roles and continually worked with staff and recognized their efforts, creating a workplace that is both enjoyable and beneficial for all. And whereas Chris Zellner has been instrumental in Waunakee's growth during his time on the village board, played a significant role in bringing the new Waunakee Public Library to life, from navigating the EPA cleanup to engaging with the community during the process. He's been an advocate for making our downtown a vibrant space and continually supports projects that benefit the Waunakee community as a whole. And whereas the village board, the employees of the village of Waunakee, and the residents of the village of Waunakee benefit tremendously from Chris Zellner's diligence, resourcefulness, and commitment. And now let it therefore be resolved that the village board of the village of Waunakee extends its sincere and heartfelt appreciation to Chris Zellner and hereby commends him for his dedication and outstanding service to the village of Waunakee and wishes him well in his future endeavors. Let this proclamation be entered and made into part of the permanent records of the village of Waunakee, and let a suitable copy be presented to Chris Zellner. All right. All right, Todd.
I would note that Chris is going to be here shortly, so feel free to make your motion and then we'll give him some extra attention. I
All
suppose.
right, okay. All right, do I have, so what would the motion be worded as? I do not have
So
my
if-
agenda. in front
If
of
you're
me.
inclined to just do one motion, I would say motion to approve proclamations for Chris Zellner, Phil Willems, Gary Hertzberg, and Peter Sukumal.
Do
I'll
we
move
have-
to approve as stated.
I'll second it. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And when Chris gets here, we'll give him some extra attention.
Sure, and we can take a brief pause if folks want to go on with the rest of their evening for those who might want to head out at this point.
Shall we resume and wait until Chris is here? Okay, so next up on the agenda, we have a presentation by Friends of Schumacher Park regarding the proposed farm machinery building and a request for village financial support.
Mark, I'll bring up the presentation and you should be able to control slide movement. So I'll have that up here ready for you in just a second. Yeah, you should be able, there's about a 4 or 5 second delay after you push the button. So don't worry, it'll get there. Yep, okay. And if you can speak at the microphone, make sure it's on green, push the button to turn it green so we can hear you. Yep, thanks.
Hi, to introduce myself, I'm Rebecca. I'm one of the board members at Schumacher Farm Park. And this is Mark Pelton from Friends of Schumacher Farm Park President, and Nell, our, sorry, I don't know your new title. Schumacher Farm Park Administrator, are one of our new staff. So the Friends of Schumacher Farm, we support the efforts at Schumacher Farm Park, one of our greatest community assets here in Waunakee. We have field trips for children. We have environmental education classes, workshops for community members, prairies and hiking trails. And we have been told by the thousands of families that we've been welcoming the last few years, many of them new families to Waunakee area, that it's such a special place to come with their children and create memories. And one of the reasons that people have said that they love Schumacher Farm so much is that it's a representation of what farm life was like about 100 years ago in South Central Wisconsin. And it's hard to find something like that nowadays. Many of us may have a grandparent or a parent or even ourselves as some connection to the agricultural world, and that's slowly disappearing or quickly disappearing, I guess, the way you look at it, with the new families coming in that don't have those roots in agriculture. And this is such a wonderful way for people to connect with that. We are fortunate to have a large collection of unique and antique historic machinery, agricultural machinery, but unfortunately, the majority of it is either in storage or either at Schumacher Farm in places that are difficult to get to, or in storage off-site. Some of the pieces are as far as Baraboo. And so this makes it nearly impossible and quite unsafe for us to get the pieces for demonstrations or community workshops. So all of these unique pieces that were donated to us are largely being unused. It's been a 16-year vision for the Friends of Schumacher Farm to build a machinery, storage, and display facility that would complete the farm, would help us showcase these different pieces to people through demonstrations, community events, workshops, and to have them all in one place with room to grow. The benefits of this would not only be that we could showcase all these different pieces with educational explanations of them, but also that the freed up spaces throughout the farms could then be converted into other types of exhibits or spaces for educational groups and field trips. So it would be a win-win in many different ways.
Hi, so Mark Pelton, and we've been working with Dane County Parks since January to come up with a design. And what you see here is we actually started with a model, and what you see is that model superimposed on the property. I just wanted to give you a view of where we're proposing the building. The CRH on the right-hand side is the existing building. So that's the location and placement just north of the CRH. So here are the specs. It's a building that's 4,800 square feet, which gives us more than enough room to store our existing equipment, plus room to grow as well. And the feature that is, I think, most interesting and where we will display equipment is in that lean-to area that you see there. So it's a wood frame construction. The storage area is just that. It's not a public space. It's just for storage, but we'll use the lean-to area for demonstrations and for exhibiting machinery, et cetera. We'll also, we're using, it'll look like the other buildings on the farm. We're going to use it's called LP Diamond Coat, which is a engineered siding that looks like wood. So it'll be identical in terms of appearance and color to the other buildings on the property. So here's the actual, this is the design approved by the state and by Dane County. We added these windows that you see up here to give light. Light will come in from the south side. We're talking about doing some nice things with lighting. The cupolas that you see up above, we hope to put can lightings under the lean-to as well. So here's just the back of the building. And here's one of the ends so you can see the lean-to. And here's the other end. Any questions on the building design purpose? Okay.
So the total cost is $331,000, and we are excited that we have, as of earlier this week, $246,000. So over 70% has been raised. The balance needed to fully fund the project is $85,000. So we are toward the end. We have received the approval to build from Dane County, the town of Westport, Village of Waunakee, and the state has approved the design, as Mark mentioned. So we are in all ways set to build, except for that last $85,000. We've talked to the people that will be doing the excavation and the construction. They're set to go as soon as we have that last piece of support. So tonight, our vision was that we could share with you more about this project, why we think it's important for the Waunakee area, get any questions from you, and plant the seed for you to start thinking about if there is a way for the Village of Waunakee to potentially contribute. And we'd be happy to continue that conversation with you and come back at a future meeting to discuss those opportunities.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Board members, do we have any questions? We're not asking for formal support tonight, but just kind of a preview of what is to come for the building.
And Kristen, I'd say if anything, staff would accept direction from the board if you care to instruct us to review potential funding sources. I'd be clear that we don't have a budget line per se in the 2023 budget, but if directed to, we can look into other options that would provide a source. I also actually suggested to the Friends group that tonight they solely give a presentation in addition to making a similar request and presentation to the town of Westport. And my hope is that we may have information from the Friends group about Westport's willingness to participate, which can then help guide your decision-making as well. But is that direction you'd like to give staff in terms of researching potential funding sources in support of the project?
Yes.
Todd, I'm assuming that you're thinking also outside of village resources, correct? Whether it be like state or other local grants that we could either apply for on their behalf, inclusive of those.
I believe some of that work has been done by Schumacher Farm Park Friends already. I believe Endress Foundation, for example, has contributed generously. I'm speaking more about funds that the village would have its own access to that we could possibly help with. As a reminder, when they did the larger barn project 10-ish years ago, the village contributed $36,000, $12,000 a year for 3 years. Now that was a much larger project, of course, but we have shown that bit of history in supporting their work.
There are questions? None? All right.
I'm sorry, I'm
go ahead.
slow here.
Yeah.
I think it would help us as well to give feedback if we knew, and you don't need to go into detail about the donors, but it'd be good to see, how much money the county has also said that they would put up or have put up. I'm assuming that's already calculated into this, just so that we can get to an appropriate number to understand where it'd be at. Just
Yeah, the county has not contributed to this. This is a new model for the county. They're very supportive of the project, and we are the first Friends organization that they have allowed to build a building. So it'll fall under the existing lease that we have. We'll build the building, we'll pay for the building, but ultimately Dane County will own the building and they lease it to us. So that's the model.
okay.
I can share, Robert, I had a phone call with Executive Parisi with that exact comment in mind, knowing that this was going to come before the board and that would be a likely question. So I give myself a pat on the back for predicting. Thank you. Anyway, Joe is gracious in sharing with me what the county believes is an array of actions and steps and sort of generous acts over time in support of the Friends Group that is, as they put it, well beyond what has typically been afforded to groups in other Dane County parks. So I think the prospect of additional monetary support of this project from the county is going to be unlikely. But what I could do is provide the board with information about the way in which Dane County has shown great support to Schumacher Farm Park and the Friends Group. I think that will help you in your decision-making next time we talk about this.
Other questions or comments from board members? No. Do we need a motion to ask staff, Brian, or can we just ask staff? We can just ask staff.
Looking for
That's
general
quick.
consensus here from the board on whether this is a viable project that you like us to look into with funding, potential funding support.
All right. Then even though we're not voting, why don't we go down the line and say a yes or a no? Nyla, would you like to start?
Yes, I would like to look for funding in the budget. I don't know how much they're looking for, but perhaps that's a question we could answer with the information that you pulled together.
Yes, agreed. I think having some sort of comparison to our past practices would be helpful.
Yes.
Yes, I'll agree. More information would be good to have.
Yeah, definitely support us exploring how we can support the project.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.
If I could just lift up Nell one more time. So Nell joined us in March and Todd actually suggested that we invite her and introduce you. She's our administrator, Schumacher Farm Park administrator, has a key role in running the day-to-day operations. And we're so lucky that we found her, or she found us. Nell, did you want to say a few words?
I started in February, so it's been a couple months, but I grew up in rural Dane County.
Sorry, quick note. If we're not going to pick you up on the audio, so if you could head up to the microphone, sorry. We really want to introduce you.
So I started at Schumacher Farm in February, grew up in rural Dane County and went to school in Madison. Lived in Milwaukee for about 16 years, working at Wisconsin Humane Society, and then moved back here to be closer to family. So I'm excited to get to know Waunakee more and to meet everyone that makes this community a great place.
Well, welcome aboard. We love Schumacher Farm Park and we're so happy to see you here. Thank you very much. Yeah. And Chris is here. Chris, come on in. All right. I'm going to go back to the podium and we're going to read this out loud. Come join us, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
All right. All right. We're going to embarrass you for a few minutes, but you've earned this. So
Okay.
ready? Ready? So whereas Chris Zellner, an active citizen of the community for many years, has faithfully served the village of Waunakee as village president for the last 8 years and as village trustee for the 7 years preceding his presidency. And whereas Chris Zellner's contribution to municipal government is an indication of his pride in our community, with notable service on the Planning Commission, the Community Development Authority, the Finance Community, and the Waunakee Committee. And whereas Chris Zellner is the founder of several annual village traditions, including Waunakee, the holiday tree and decor on Main Street, the Light the Night celebration, and dedicates many hours each year to planning and preparing for these and other community-wide events. And whereas Chris Zellner has been dedicated to appreciating the history of Waunakee, advocating for the adoption of the land acknowledgement recognizing Waunakee as the ancestral land of the Ho-Chunk Nation, building the foundation for what is now a strong relationship between the village of Waunakee and the Ho-Chunk Nation. And whereas Chris Zellner has put great emphasis on the importance of village employees and their roles and continually worked with staff and recognized their efforts, creating a workplace that is both enjoyable and beneficial for all. And whereas Chris Zellner has been instrumental in Waunakee's growth during his time on the village board, he played a significant role in bringing the new Waunakee Public Library to life, From navigating the EPA cleanup to engaging with the community during the process, he has been an advocate of making our downtown a vibrant space and continually supports projects that benefit the Waunakee community as a whole. And whereas the village board, the employees of the village of Waunakee, and the residents of the village of Waunakee have benefited tremendously from your diligence, your resourcefulness, your commitment, let it be resolved that the village board of the village of Waunakee extends its sincere and heartfelt appreciation to you, Chris. And we hereby commend you for your dedication and your outstanding service to the village, and we wish you well in your future endeavors. Let this proclamation be entered into and made part of the permanent records of the village of Waunakee. Let a suitable copy be presented to you, Chris.
Would like to say a few words? No, not really.
But I will.
For meeting everybody.
So this is great. Can you hear, am I working? Up there, you can really hear this. I don't really hear it here, so it's a little different. So I got used to being off on Mondays already. So I apologize for being late. It's been a great honor. The only thing that's not on here that I was very proud of is the village staff. I love the village staff. They work so diligently for the community. If there's any way for me to thank them more, I would. They just do a fabulous job. To the board members, thank you for taking on this duty to serve our community, which is so very important to me. Each and every one of you and taking that role. Some of you that I worked with, some of you are new. It's such a vital thing to the community, and so many people don't recognize it the way it probably should be recognized and follow along as close as they should. And that's my lecture of the day, by the way. People should follow along with what's going on in their village and be active and part of what's going on. So to staff, Todd, our village attorney, Brian, who reminded me to thank him out here before I came in. Thank you all for the work that you've done, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to enjoy myself and my time with my family and other activities that I can do for the community. So thank you.
We sure are lucky as a community, aren't we? Yeah, we've got great people, live here, serve here, work here. We're very lucky. All right. With that, next item on the agenda is village committee reports. Who would like to go first? All right. Thank you, Nyla.
The Public Works Committee met and we had a presentation from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation pertaining to the Division Street River Road reconstruction and construction project. The report looks like this. It can be obtained, I believe, online. It's a very good report. And I am very happy to say that today the Patrick Avenue project began, and there will be, if other projects haven't began yet throughout the village, they will be beginning very soon. So be careful out there when you're driving. Be careful so you don't, when you run into the construction, drive slow and be aware of your surroundings. Thanks.
Thank you, Nyla. Who would like to go next? Robert, would you like to go?
Might be the only other person that has a presentation. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Trustee Fry and I are members of the Fire Commission. I'm sorry, I got the Fire District before Brian yells at me. The Fire District, and I'm pleased to announce that Trustee Fry was elected vice chair of the Fire District, so it's positive for us. They did approve on kind of a split vote to purchase a car too. So what that means is that the fire department is getting a bigger truck that will have extra radios on it for when they have multiple outside areas responding, which is helpful for response times. There are going to be some future items that presumably will come before the village board. One is that they would like to do a remodel of the building. For those that don't know, the village actually owns the fire department building, and we are actually the village board is the landlord. So if they wish to make changes, they have to come before the village board. So that should be a future item, most likely, that I would imagine they would bring. They also presented the first draft of their staffing plan for the 10-year staffing plan. It's something that is available online if anyone would like to look at. I would stress that it appeared to be a first draft, so there's going to be changes coming to it in the future, I would imagine. But I'm more than happy to speak with anybody, that any citizens interested to know more information about that.
Thank you. And we have utilities. And then after that, Robert, do you want to make any comments on lobbying day?
Yeah.
Too?
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Joe, would you mind?
Sure. So utilities met on the 22nd of May. A couple of particularly pertinent things, I guess, would be there's a bulk water fill-up location at the side of the utilities building. There was an approval for some metering or dispensing equipment for that. The other thing would be there was a change when sprinklers are hooked up to a water main, it's billed differently, separately than the rest of the water for that facility. So there was a discussion about where we determine the size of that connection. It'll be measured at the connection to the main. Other than that, it's not really a committee, but there was also the spring shred event last Thursday. Brought in about 2.25 tons of paper that was shredded on site. So that was pretty cool. That's it.
That's a lot of paper.
It is.
All right. Oh, yes. Oh, library. Yes, I'm so sorry.
Hey, library is a great place to be in the summer. We just met a few weeks ago. June 1st was the start of the summer reading program, and there's youth and adult programs. So I would encourage everyone to go to the library this summer. They're very excited to have you.
Seeing any other committees? No? All right. If you don't mind commenting on lobbying day.
Yes, so the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, in fact, it wasn't just them, it was the towns lobbying and the county lobbying all met for Government Day at the Capitol that coincided with, if anybody's been following in the news, there's an Assembly bill and a Senate bill on shared revenue. This is something that is actually probably the biggest thing you've never heard of in local government funding because it hasn't really been touched in quite some time. We're talking decades. And if this bill passes, and they're working on it bipartisanly, which is something that we can't say a lot these days, it would be a boon for the village because it would finally give us an uncapped amount of revenue share because it would now be tied to a small amount of the state sales tax would now be payable back to municipalities for state funding. What that means is that it's sustainable. It means that over the long term, as the state grows and as sales grow, then municipalities would see more money come in. It also would potentially introduce what's known as an innovation fund. It would incentivize municipalities to work together to save money on offering services. If they engage in new products or projects that reach certain thresholds, the state would cover 25% of the project. So it's important. It's something that all of the lobbying groups would like us to lobby our elected officials on to get them to pass it. There are some sticking points that they were very honest about from the league, and the first one is just that it would take away, as currently written, our ability to have local referenda. So what that would mean is like the pool referendum that just occurred, they're attempting to make that disallowed under state law. And then there's a lot of things on there that don't impact us whatsoever that have to do with the city of Milwaukee, which is currently facing some fiscal issues. So we would see, we'll have to see if they can get it cleaned up. But if they do, it could mean potentially quite a bit more, money for the village to be working with. So there's some optimism there. I'd also encourage, anyone in here who's interested, reach out to Senator Hesselben or Representative Joer's office and say that you support shared revenue for municipal funding.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. That ends our village committee reports. We are on to our licenses and permits. And we have in total 26 applications or reapplications for licenses and permits for alcohol beverage application. So two questions. Brian, can we make a motion to approve these all as one, or do we need to go through them one by one?
We will be able to do one motion if that's how you want. I would
Okay.
want to ask. as I look through the packet, it looks like there's recommended motions for all of the individual items. And are all of them recommended motions to approve with conditions?
Correct.
So yeah, once we're done to the, I have a potential motion here. If
Okay.
that's the direction you want to go.
Okay. Is that the direction we would like to go, or do we want to go through them one by one?
My only concern is a few of them have some extremely specific language to the particular application.
So if it's okay, let me read my proposed motion because I think it will
Okay.
address your concern. So the motion would be motion to approve the renewal of the alcohol beverage license applications identified in items 1 through 26 under licenses and permits pursuant to the recommended motions, including with conditions identified in the village board packet. So if you make that motion, essentially every recommended motion that's in your packet is the one that's passed, including all of the detail in certain specific recommended motions.
All right. So do we want to discuss making that motion before? Tricia?
Just a question, probably more for Carla, if there's anything that's, having been the first time reading through all of these applications, not sure where, if there's any different nuances or anything you'd like to call attention to?
No, there's nothing that, a lot of these are all renewals. I believe all of them are renewals. I don't think there's any one brand new one. I don't want to speak out of turn. No, these are all renewal license. They've already been approved by the board in the past. And this is for the licensing cycle to start July 1 to June 30th, 2024. So they've all been approved by the police department. They've been reviewed by our office. And we don't see any concerns from a staff.
All right. So do we have a preference to go through them one by one or to approve as a whole? Approve as a whole? Would you like to make the motion? Yeah.
Yeah, a motion to approve as read by Village Attorney Kleinmeyer.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's.
One question before we continue on, and this isn't intended to lead anywhere, but do we have a maximum number of liquor licenses that we can have outstanding at any given time?
We do. So it depends on the type of license. We have 10 regular licenses that were under the quota system established through the, I don't know what year it was, 19, I don't know if you know, but we have reserve licenses, and those we gain extra additional reserve licenses based on our population growth. So we currently have 19 of those available. I think we've issued, with these, we will have issued 6. 5 or 6. And then beer only licenses are unlimited.
All right. All right. Any other questions or discussion? No? Seeing none, let's move to question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. Next up on the agenda. Let me flip my page here, see where we are. Discuss and take action on bids for upper level renovations at 710 South Street, the former library building. And that, if you are paying attention in your packet, is on page 258. Todd or Tim?
Actually, Bill and Todd.
Bill and Todd.
Bill and Todd's excellent. adventure.
Excellent.
I wish I could retract what I just said. Bill, go ahead. Why don't you start?
Back in early part of May, we put out solicitation for bids for the remodeling of the upper half of the old library. Bid opening was on May 26th. At that time, we received 2 bids, which I believe is in your packets. And we only had one bidder, which was CBI for total package of $407,550.
I think for clarity, what Bill meant by 2 bids is there's 2 different scopes of work, both bid on by a single bidder.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
What questions do we have? Nyla?
Is there a time frame involved with this process at this time? As far as when the work would start and when it would be expected, when Neighborhood Connections thinks it should be finished?
I don't have that exact number, but I can get that for you.
We did specify a date, I
Date, whatever.
believe, in the bid documents. If I'm guessing it was something like November 1st. Is that?
Sounds, it was mid fall.
And important to WNC was that happened before the snow flies for purposes of moving. In fact, Joe is here representing WNC. He can speak to that too in just a bit, but yeah, we did take into account their interest in having that move completed before snow.
Thank you. That was my concern, is that they wouldn't be moving in the middle of the winter.
Other questions in the bid? Yep.
Is this the same firm that did the work for the pantry downstairs, or is this a different company?
No, it'd be the same.
Same, okay. The reason I asked this, when we did the walkthrough that they invited us to, they did express some concerns to me about some of the timelines that this company maybe didn't do the best at.
Well, we ran into some complications, I'll say, in that lower half that kind of messed with those timelines. So I don't necessarily know if there was anything that they would have done. I mean, we had some structural things we had to work through that we weren't aware of. So that's kind of made their timeline a little tough to meet.
I was going to say, any contractor in the same shoes would have been presented with the same challenge with timing that couldn't have been overcome magically in any way.
Yeah. So does that mean that then we feel like we've discovered any of the issues that could be upstairs?
We went through the upstairs in more detail to make sure we didn't have any of these kind of things happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, other questions? Sam? Nothing? No, Aaron? Joe? No.
And I do realize, Kristen, that the next item does interrelate.
Yes.
And specifically, it relates to the timing of some
Mhm.
funding for the project. So if you want to have that discussion also before you take action on awarding the contract, that's
Yeah.
okay with me. Would that be helpful?
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, if you could come up to the podium, I'll introduce the subject related to the funding. Joe Cost is a member of the board for the Waunakee Neighborhood Connection, representing them this evening. As you saw in your packet, the funding source for the project is our ARPA dollars. Renee has been constantly monitoring our ARPA allocation and our ARPA balance. Funds are sufficient to cover our ARPA expense. And if you can clarify, the project as proposed is in two different scopes of work. One, the village portion, which you see identified in the packet, and another, the WNC portion. What we're being asked by WNC is to front the full project cost so that their funding source, which is the sale of their current building, comes to its conclusion to allow them to pay for their portion. But Renee, do you have any concerns about ARPA or any other funding source being used to front the WNC costs?
So we would not be able to use ARPA to front their costs, but we have enough cash flow or using funds on hand of our other dollars. So we don't, to cover that full amount, we do not have enough ARPA dollars for that. We cover our share with ARPA dollars, but we would be able to front their costs with other funds of the village.
An logical question that you would have then is, how long might we wait till closure and WNC having funds to start to begin their portion of payment on their scope of work? And that's why Joe is here to give you an update from WNC board.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. And so again, Joe Koss, currently serve on the board of Waunakee Neighborhood Connection. And on behalf of our board and staff, certainly want to thank the village board for your continued support of Waunakee Neighborhood Connection, especially as we look forward to our move to the former library. So some good news to report. We have received an offer on our building, which we did recently accept, and that will provide more than enough funding to cover this remodel project. And the Anticipated close date is November 1st, and our buyer does have flexibility with that date depending on the remodel project as well.
Excellent. That's great news. Yeah, that is great news. So the timeline then would be relatively short for when we're covering.
Right, and that, yeah, with this in mind, gives us as staff confidence in the recommendation that we've put forward for the board tonight.
All right. All right. So questions? Yes, Nyla.
Renee, what would the balance of the ARPA funds be after we contribute what they're asking, after we contribute our portion?
I would say then that leaves about a little over 100,000 of ARPA dollars that we would have to use by the end of 2024.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions? All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for coming to present today. Should we go back to item number, let's see here, 2 and or item number 1?
So I think
But-
you can go back to item number 1, take a motion if you want to. The recommend motion is on page 258. When you do go to 2, though, I think we should introduce it because
Yes.
the discussion thus far has been appropriate. When we get to it, let's introduce it though.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Item number 1, item page 258. Do we have anyone that would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the award of the contract to create a business interiors in the amount of $407,550.
Second.
All right. Before we call the question, do we have any discussion on the motion? No, seeing none, let's move to question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 2, discuss and take action on billing methods related to Waunakee Neighborhood Connection scope of work. And Todd or Tim?
We've already presented that
Mhm.
information. The recommended motion is on page 271 of your packet, which is prepared for your consideration.
So page 271. I will go ahead and make the motion to approve the request from Waunakee Neighborhood Connection to delay billing for WNC's construction costs at 710 South Street until WNC closes on the sale of their current building.
Second.
All right. Any discussion before we move to question?
I have a question for staff. So since we're leaving this a little open-ended with it's based off of the sale of the building, and I'm sorry, you already made your motion. I was hoping I
Right.
could ask before the motion, but if for any reason, and I'm not saying that it would fall through, but if it did fall through, just if we make this motion this way, are we on the hook then until any future sale would take place if in case this does not take place?
That's accurate. And with that in mind, did you want to jump in?
Well, you
I was
you're-
going to say, if you care to place a time threshold on this, say year end, I think that would be a reasonable action. I think if things fall through, we may have additional discussions with the WNC board to work through some other solutions. But I don't think it's unreasonable to place a threshold date on the motion.
I mean, I'm sure we would approve any future one based on new timelines. I just want to make sure that we're not.
I just wanted to say that in their request letter, they did say that they would enter into a memo of understanding as well to further help. That, right? Didn't we talk about that?
We did. We would want to memorialize this with that letter, which your action would enable us to do. But sort of maybe to put Joe on the spot, would there be opposition to an end of year deadline of sorts related to the agreement?
And I think there's other interested parties too that could turn to this sale to fall through.
Okay, so for purposes of the recording, Joe Koss from WNC board indicated that should this sale fall through, they have other interested parties besides the party that they've accepted an offer with thus far.
All right. Robert, do you want to make an amendment to that?
I may not have to. Let me ask one more question. So could we define in the agreement that's signed a time limit without having to make it a part of the official motion, or do I need to make that in the official motion?
I would just, I think your amendment makes sense. I would just add to the existing motion or until December 1st, December 31st, 2023, whichever occurs earlier.
Okay, then I motion to amend to add that it would expire at the end of the year. Sorry, that it would expire on December 31st, 2023.
All right, I would accept the motion.
Second.
All right. All right, any further discussion before we call the question?
So you're
Oh, wait.
voting on the amendment
Amendment.
first. Yep.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. Vote first to amend the motion. So all in favor of accepting the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, now on to the motion itself. To approve, just to reread it, to move to approve the request from the Waunakee Neighborhood Connection to delay billing for WNC's construction at 710 South Street until WNC closes on the sale of the current building or the end of the year, December 31st, 2023. Any further discussion before we move to question?
Just that this is an exciting day. It's been a long work in progress and I'm excited that this is happening, even with another little delay.
All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. All right, next item on the list, discuss and take action on consideration of the petition regarding the display of flags and street lighting. If you're following along in your packet, this is page 274. And Todd, would you like to present this or I can speak on it?
Yeah, the petition that was received after consulting with the village president, we decided that it'd be appropriate to bring to the village board for your full consideration. So I do know that there were some questions that were raised by some in the community with communications to the board for your last meeting's discussion that referred to recent decisions at the federal level. And I know the village attorney is prepared to, he's reviewed those issues and is prepared to provide you with an update on his review.
So it's all right, Brian, would you mind?
Sure. So there were some communications with the village board, and I know we touched on this a little bit at the last meeting regarding a decision in 2022 from the United States Supreme Court. And really that case dealt with the use of a flagpole in the city of Boston. One of the things, so there was a majority opinion and a number of concurring opinions, and essentially the Supreme Court ruled against the city of Boston in that particular case. Facts are a little bit different, so I'm not going to go into great detail. I will say this, though, there is one change that I'm going to recommend that we make to our policy that's not going to fundamentally change it. But one of the majority opinion essentially tried to make the distinction between government speech and private speech. And they referred to a policy that the city of San Jose in California had adopted. And and I'm just going to read this to you. This is from the San Jose policy. I think village staff is going to come back to you with similar language that we would just add to the purpose and scope of our policy in an effort to try to provide as much legal protection as possible. It just says, the San Jose policy says, the city's flagpoles are not intended to serve as a forum for free expression by the public. The following flags may be displayed by the city as an expression of the city's official sentiments. The language that the city staff is going to come back is going to be a little bit different but it's essentially going to capture that concept. When you look at the Supreme Court decision, there's two kind of key features to try to make these flags that we fly under our policy government speech. One is, do we control the flag raising? And the second is, do we shape the messages in the flag? Now, our very limited but recent experiences, we do not shape the messages in the flag. By our own policy, they come to us. We don't pay for them, they're donated. So we need to make the control over the flagging as governmental as possible. And I think we've done that. It's always got to be a village board member that brings it forward. It's action that's taken by the village board. One of the limitations that we have in our policy is that the flag that we would fly at the village needs to have been flown either at the state capitol or the federal capitol. That I think, again, shows more governmental involvement in the process. Making this change doesn't guarantee, we can never guarantee that we're going to withstand scrutiny. I can tell you right now, my reading of this case is there's 4 justices right now who would tell us that our policy doesn't matter at all. They would say that Anytime the village does what we've done previously in the different flags that we've discussed, it's not government speech, it's simply private speech cloaked by governmental action. There's 4 justices who would say that right now. But I do believe that adding that language is consistent with the majority opinion in this case, and I do think it benefits us from the standpoint if we ever are challenged, we are going to have to argue that this is government speech. But I think I'd also like to, if I can, comment on so I'm on page 280 of the packet, and so this is the petition that was filed, and I'm going to kind of work from 5 up to 1 backwards. Just in my reading of our policy and in the Supreme Court decision, just give you my opinion on these different 5 points. The first one, so number 5, to me, that's a little too open-ended. I mean, as I read that, it essentially says, hey, we're going to have a process that we're going to follow, but if we don't want to, we don't have to follow that process. To me, that takes away from our policy. So I don't think that we should utilize number 5. I would say that number 4, the only village facility at which the commemorative flag is authorized to be displayed is at a flagpole in front of Village Hall. I would say that that's your discretion if you want to place that limitation. Right now, the policy allows for the flag to be flown at 3, I believe it's 3 different locations. Whether it's 1 or 3, I don't think impacts the case. So that to me is at your discretion if you want to make that change. Requests for a commemorative flag are to be restricted to a Waunakee residence. And then it goes on. I would say no to that because I do think it's important that the request is coming from a village board member. Again, if we're ever put in a position where we have to argue to uphold the policy, again, there's really 2 things that at least the majority opinion is looking at. Do you control what's in the flag, the message, and do you control how it goes on your flag poles? Again, we really don't have much. At least to date, we have not had much say over the message, but we do want to control what goes on our flagpole. That's why I think it's important that it comes from a village board member. That's consistent with the existing policy. I would say that points 1 and 2, I think if you wanted to do those, you have the discretion to do that. My belief is that the existing policy is a little bit better. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but I do think it's good that it has to come to the village board each time you're talking about a specific flag. And so I do think that there is value, for example, in the pride flag that the village is flying now, that it comes forward by itself in May every time that you're going to do it. To me, whenever a village board member approaches the board and wants a particular commemorative flag to be flown, I do think there's value in having the board take up each one of those individually, just because in my opinion, then it really gets at you are acting as a village board on a specific request each time.
If I could add just
Yes.
a couple more points, sort of to provide some clarification related to some terminology that Brian used a little bit ago. He referenced that we've flown flags that have been flown at the Capitol. I want to just provide some clarity. I think it's fair to offer this for the board to consider. As our policy is written, it refers to flags that have been displayed at the U.S. Capitol or the nation's Capitol. It doesn't reference having flown above the entrance or above the dome. And I bring that up because when the board approved flying the Ho-Chunk Nation flag here in the village last year, I think it was last November, our research indicated that the Ho-Chunk Nation flag had not been flown above the state capitol, although it was and is continuously displayed within the state capitol at the entrance to the governor's office. Now, why wouldn't the state fly the Ho-Chunk flag over to the Capitol? There's 11 federally recognized tribes in our state, so it makes sense that they wouldn't do that. If it's the board's intent, if it was the board's intent initially that you're really only referring for purposes of allowing a certain flag at any given time, that you're looking towards flags that are actually flown on the flag mast outside either Capitol, then a rewording may be appropriate. With that in mind, if the Ho-Chunk flag is still important to the board, you may then need in the policy to call out the Ho-Chunk flag uniquely like we have a few other examples. So
And to be clear, I was not intending to recommend changing. I was speaking broadly. So I think the way that it's, what I said, I mean, to me, it still goes back to the fact that a governmental body, whether it's the federal or state government, has taken similar action. To me, that shows that what we're doing is governmental in nature. And it just, obviously, if it's significant enough for the United States government or the state of Wisconsin to display the flag, then, to me, that creates an additional justification for Village of Waunakee to do it.
All right. All right. Well, let's open discussion. Does anyone have any comments, anything that they would like to say?
I'm curious about the second part of number 3. I think the cost has been trivial in the past, but is there, I guess, any reason that we would actually want to have someone pay a fee for that installation? And if so, what amount would that end up being realistically?
Well, I guess I just so that everyone is aware, we do have language in the existing policy that it says except for incidental staff time, the village shall not incur costs when reviewing and implementing the request under the policy. My recollection, and there's another sentence then too, but my recollection is that we don't want anyone going on our property to do this. And so while there's not a lot of effort, we definitely are going to do it ourselves. Whether or not we want to charge somebody for that, I think that's your discretion. I don't think it's necessary under the policy I don't think whether we charge somebody a fee or not is going to be determinative if our policy is ever in question.
Agreed. Just curious what that dollar amount might be if we were to head down that road.
if you're referring to staff time involved,
Yeah.
I think Bill's here still. I watch them do it from my office window per site. It takes 3 minutes, maybe to move 3 to 5 minutes to move the flags around. You multiply that by the 3 different buildings and travel time to and from, and you're not more than an hour in total for usually two crew members are out there, right, Bill?
Yeah, actually, here's the only place we have travel time to, because there's building maintenance people at the village center and the library. So that just matter them going out and putting them up. So it's very minimal in time.
As far as time for staff being paid, I think it would create more paperwork and cost than what we receive for the fees. That's just my.
I mean, it certainly would be paperwork. Yeah. Other comments? Robert?
I appreciate that you've given us some additional language we consider to make it stronger. May not be what the petitioners were looking for to happen with this petition, but I think that that's something that if there is any language we can add to improve it, I'm all for that. I have 2 questions. One is there an easy way for the public to see our policies on the website, or do they have to request from the village? And the reason I ask that is because some of the questions that were in this petition, if they would have realized that we already do some of these things. Is it just because it's not available to the public to see that?
We can certainly make it available. I can say that the individual who circulated the petition contacted us prior to circulating, and we provided that person with the policy, so they were aware prior to crafting the petition.
Okay.
But that's certainly something we can provide. If it's anywhere, it's contained within minutes and packets of the information, but not called out specifically in the website.
Okay.
Reasonable for us to do that.
Okay. I think that would be great, just so that we can put that to rest. I guess not a question, it's more of a comment on my own behalf. I think this petition is just an attempt to have a small minority of speakers who have every right to put a petition out there, but I think they're trying to control speech, and I don't think that we should be looking to make any of the changes that are recommended in this petition. I do agree with Brian's comments about adopting the San Jose language, just because I think we do need to make it very clear it's government speech, but you can get laws passed easier in this village than some of the restrictions on here. So I'd be completely against that.
All right. Any other comments? No? None. I will say, so the question was raised earlier today during public comments of why is this on the petition on the agenda? I think part of good government, from my perspective, is that we don't entertain just the people that might agree with our own personal viewpoints or agree with the majority of opinion, but we give equal consideration to people whose opinions are different than ours. And so when this came forward, it was within a day of, it was after the agenda was published, within a day or two of the meeting. And so it was not practical to put it on the original meeting and have the same discussion. But I felt that those who had a contrary viewpoint deserve to have their opinions heard and thoughtfully considered in going forward. And we'll continue to do that as a government. That is our job, to listen to all and to hopefully make decisions that are in the best interest of the entire community. For me personally, I would like to see us perhaps add that language just from a protection standpoint, because we do seem to have this, two things that we are considering or we need to weigh and maybe need to beef up that a little bit. So you referred to it as the San Jose language, but what was the specific sentence, if you don't mind repeating that we should be including or might want to consider?
Sure. It's from the city of San Jose policy.
Okay.
And we'll put something together and bring it back to the board, but the language, and again, the language that we're going to propose is going to be similar, but not necessarily identical. But it says the city's flagpoles are not intended to serve as a forum for free expression by the public. The following flags may be displayed by the city as an expression of the city's official sentiment. So really the key language in there is, this is our expression. And by our, I mean the village board's expression.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Do we need to make a motion for that or just direct? Okay. So if you wouldn't mind bringing that back to us. Thank you very much. All right, and thank you for those of us, or those of you who came today to speak on both halves of the issue or came to hear the discussion. We appreciate your participation as always. All right, next item on the agenda is discuss and take action on adoption of the Affordable Housing Betterment Fund program, and that's on page 286 of your packet if you are following along. And is that Tim?
It is. Thank you. I'll take that one. So included in the packet is the latest iteration of the Housing Betterment Fund program. It is based on comments made at the village board meeting on May 15th. I'll just quickly go over some of those specific issues that were identified. The section on universal design is now identified as Appendix B and is intended to be used as part of the livability score matrix. Their clawback language was discussed. Language is added under the grant guidelines section that clarifies situations in which the village can recover these funds, including applicable statutory reference. There was another question or issue brought up about matching funds. Language has been added under the eligible properties and reimbursement procedures that reiterates the confirmation of the one-to-one matching funds and that is satisfied. Income qualification, staff has amended the scoring, which is identified as Appendix C, to place greater weight on the income to ensure that is the most relevant, modifying the scoring on that Appendix C to create a maximum of 24 points with an increasing minimum score of 16 points needed for funds to be awarded. So again, the intention of that is to place greater emphasis on the income qualification piece. And then lastly, a question or an issue was raised about the length of valid application. And while this specific language isn't included in the program document, there would be three options resulting from a submittal. One would be an applicant is not eligible. Two, the applicant is eligible and awarded funds, or three, the applicant is eligible but not awarded funds. So all applications would be on file, but for those who fall into that last category, category 3, we would need a letter of intent from that applicant requesting that their previous submittal be reevaluated and attesting that the information is still current. If that information is not current differs from that original submittal, then they would need to submit a new application form. So those are the changes in summary. Staff is recommending approval, but obviously if there are other changes that you'd like to see, we will make those as needed.
All right, thank you very much. What questions do we have? What discussion? This is a big program. These are big changes. Robert, yeah.
Assume positive intent for what I'm about to say here. I really want this to be a good program, so I'm probably nitpicking a little too far. But is there I'm going to go back to the income, and I appreciate the change of the scoring system and doubling the minimum. That's big. And this might be more of a legal question, but if we use the funds from, presumably we're going to continue to fund this program with a majority of funds from the TID extension funding. Do we not have to make sure that those funds are used for people who fall under the 80% or less area median income? Isn't that a legal requirement of those funds?
You want to take that, Brian? You want me to?
Well, so the statutory language is is affordable housing is housing that costs a household no more than 30% of the household's gross monthly income. So that's the statutory definition. One of the things that Tim and I talked about is, as we go through the process, each time we get an application, if staff is going to make a recommendation of approval, we're going to have to confirm that that's met.
Okay.
I think the changes made in the scoring matrix were effectively being done, knowing that we're still going to have to do that. But at a staff level, I think we feel very strongly that if somebody hits that minimum threshold, in all likelihood, they will meet that definition. All that being said, yes, we're going to have to confirm that each time.
Okay. That takes care of my only concern then.
Any other comments or questions?
I'd just like to thank staff and for going through and being so thorough on this. It really covers all the stuff that we discussed previously.
Yes.
Just one minor thing. I noticed in the table of contents, the formatting is off. The formatting is actually correct in the Word version, but the conversion to the packet format and on base, I think, shifted everything. So it will aesthetically look as it should. One thing too, I just wanted to add though, since this is a first step, and we anticipate that it's going to be hard to be perfect right out of the chute. So as was discovered or discussed rather at the CDA meeting, we anticipate that changes will likely be made to this program over time as we see it through. So, but every journey begins with the first step.
All right, Nyla, your fingers by the button.
Yep. Motion to approve Waunakee's affordable housing program.
Second.
All right, do we have any comments or any further discussion before we go for a vote? No? I'll make a comment before we go for a vote. This has been a huge lift. Thank you guys, staff. This has been a long time in the works and a tremendous amount of work. So regardless of the outcome of the vote, thank you. All right. With that, let's call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Yay. Right. Is that the end of our agenda?
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? No?
Sure. I'll have a little discussion on that, just sort of a side comment. I'd like to say congratulations to Jerry and Linda on their 31st.
Yes. Yeah. All
Can I
right.
jump in before you take action too?
Yes.
We wanted to check quick on quorum for July 3rd. Is anybody in a position of conflict on that date? Okay, good to know. Thank you.
All right. All right. With that, all in favor of adjourning? Aye. Any abstentions? Nays? All right. All right. Go enjoy the good weather.
You're going to sign. Okay.